He was just 18, homeless, and leaving the orphanage with nothing but a small bag. Then he inherited a mountain water tank, forgotten by the world. What he found inside wasn't money, gold, or treasure. It was a secret that could change the lives of thousands. And someone was already watching. Before we start, join our YouTube family by subscribing to the channel. Don't forget to like this video and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, let's get into the story. The day I turned 18 felt quiet and heavy. I woke up early in the small room at the orphanage. The bed was simple and the blanket was thin. The window showed the hills outside the town. The air was cool and the sky was pale blue. I had lived here for most of my life. Now it was time to leave. The director called me to her office after breakfast. She was an older woman with gentle eyes. She had taken care of many children before me. She placed a small envelope on the table. "This came for you," she said. I looked at the envelope. My name was written on the front, in careful handwriting. The paper looked old. "Who sent this?" I asked. "It was left for you years ago," she said. "A man named Daniel Reyes. He said you should receive it when you turn 18. I did not know that name." I opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a folded letter. There was also a paper with a map. The letter was short. It said that Daniel Reyes had passed away 3 years earlier. It said that he had left me something. It said that I was now the legal owner of a mountain water tank near an old valley road. I read the letter again. It sounded strange. A water tank. That was all. No house, no land with animals, no money. Just a water tank on a mountain. The director watched me quietly. "I am sorry," she said. "It is not much." I shook my head slowly. "It is something," I said. She gave a small smile. "Sometimes something small becomes important," she said. I packed my bag that afternoon. I did not own many things. 2 shirts, a jacket, a small notebook, a photograph of the orphanage children standing together in front of the building. By evening, I stood outside the gate. For the first time in my life, I had no place waiting for me. The road stretched into the town. I walked down slowly. The town was quiet that night. Yellow lights shone from small shops. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. I sat on a bench and looked at the map again. The map showed a narrow road leading into the mountains. A red circle marked a place near a hilltop. That was where the water tank stood. I decided to go the next morning. A mechanic in town allowed me to borrow an old pickup truck. He knew the director from the orphanage. The truck was old, but strong. The engine started with a loud rumble. The road out of town turned into a dusty trail. Pine trees began to appear along the sides. The air smelled fresh and cold. The mountains grew larger as I drove higher. The road twisted around rocks and steep slopes. Sometimes the valley opened wide below me. After more than an hour, I saw something tall on the hill ahead. It was a metal water tank. The tank stood on 4 strong legs made of iron. A ladder climbed up the side. The metal looked weathered and faded. Next to it stood a small wooden shack. The place looked lonely. Wind moved through the dry grass. The sky above was bright and wide. I stopped the truck near the hill. The engine turned off, and silence filled the air. I stepped out slowly. The ground was covered with small stones. The wind felt colder up here. I walked toward the tank. It was taller than I expected. The metal surface was rough, with old paint and rust spots. But something caught my eye. The pipe running from the bottom of the tank looked new. The metal shined slightly in the sunlight. Someone had changed it not long ago. That was strange. If the tank was abandoned, then why replace the pipe? I looked around the hill. There were no houses nearby, no farms, no roads, except the dusty trail I had used. I walked toward the small shack. The wooden door creaked as I pushed it open. Inside the shack, there was a table and a chair. A shelf hung on one wall. A dusty lantern rested on the table. The room smelled like old wood and dry dust. A photograph hung on the wall. I stepped closer. The photo showed an older man standing beside the same water tank. He wore a wide cowboy hat. His face looked strong and calm. The hills behind him looked exactly like the hills outside the shack. I turned the photo over. 3 words were written on the back. For the right kid. My chest felt tight. Was this Daniel Reyes? Why would he leave something to a boy from an orphanage? I stepped outside again. The wind pushed against my jacket. The metal ladder on the tank made a soft sound as it moved slightly in the breeze. Then I noticed something else. There were fresh scratches on the ladder steps. The marks looked new, like boots had climbed it recently. I stared up at the top of the tank. The metal lid could be seen from below. It looked slightly open. My heart beat a little faster. If someone had climbed the tank recently, then maybe this place was not forgotten. I walked closer to the ladder. The iron felt cold when I touched it. I looked around the empty hills one more time. No trucks, no people, no movement, only the wind. I placed my foot on the first step. The ladder creaked softly. Each step felt higher than the last. The ground slowly moved farther away. Halfway up, I stopped and looked across the valley. The mountains stretched far into the distance. The world looked wide and silent. I climbed the rest of the way to the top. The platform circled the tank. The metal floor was dusty, but there were footprints. Fresh footprints. Someone had been here. I walked slowly toward the lid. It was heavy, but slightly open. My hands felt tense as I pushed it wider. The smell of cold water rose from inside. I leaned over the edge and looked down. Clear mountain water filled the tank. The surface was still and dark. For a moment, I thought there was nothing unusual. Then I saw something beneath the water. A long, dark shape. Metal. It was not part of the tank. It looked like a box tied to the inner ladder. My heart began to beat harder. Why would someone hide a metal box inside a water tank? The wind suddenly grew stronger around the hill. The metal ladder rattled. Softly, I leaned farther over the opening. The box was definitely tied with rope. Someone had placed it there on purpose. I looked around the empty mountains again. The silence felt different now. It felt like a secret was waiting to be opened. I took a slow breath. Then, far below in the distance, I heard something faint. A sound carried by the wind. An engine. A vehicle climbing the mountain road. And it was coming straight toward the water tank. The sun hung low over the mountains. The light was soft, but bright enough to see everything. I crouched inside the shack and listened. The wind moved the dry grass around the hill. Small stones shifted under the weight of my boots. The engine of a truck had stopped a few minutes ago. 2 men had stepped out. I could hear their boots on the gravel road. They were moving slowly but deliberately. Their hats shadowed their faces. Dust clung to their jackets and pants. I could see the younger one glancing toward the water tank constantly. The older man stayed near the truck. I kept my hand on the metal box hidden under the table. My heart beat fast. My mind raced. I thought about climbing down and running, but the hill was steep. The grass and stones made it dangerous. I could not risk it. I thought about the letter and the map. Daniel Reyes had trusted me with something important. I could not let it go. I held my breath as the younger man walked closer to the shack. His boots scraped the wooden floor outside. I could hear the nails in the boards creak slightly. My body stayed still. I tried not to make a sound. The older man spoke softly. "You know someone has been here recently," he said. I swallowed hard. He was not angry. He sounded calm. His voice had authority. I nodded slightly. The younger man crouched and looked at the water tank. The lid of the tank had slight scratches on the edge. It was open just a little. Fresh scratches were visible on the ladder. That meant someone had climbed recently. I realized that the box I had found was not hidden long ago. It had been placed there for a reason. My palms were wet with sweat. The box was heavy and cold. Water had seeped from it as I dragged it into the shack. I glanced at the shack walls. The sunlight came through cracks in the wood. Dust floated in the air. I could see it clearly. The older man adjusted his hat. His eyes scanned the hills. He squinted at the horizon. I realized he was assessing the area. He knew the mountains well. He knew the road and the tank. The younger man moved closer to the ladder. I tried to control my breathing. Each inhale was loud in the quiet shack. I wished I could be invisible. I thought about the map again. The red circle marked the hill, the tank, the shack. That was where Daniel Reyes had left everything. I remembered the letter. He had said only the right person could find it. Now I was that person. I had climbed the ladder. I had opened the tank. I had found the box. The older man walked slowly toward the shack. I crouched lower. My eyes stayed on him. He removed his hat and wiped his forehead. He looked tired. His face had lines of age and experience. He studied me carefully. Then he said, "You opened the tank, didn't you?" My throat was dry. I nodded slowly. He smiled faintly. "Then you found the box." I swallowed hard. I nodded again. My heart beat faster. The younger man came closer. He was tense, but not threatening. The older man explained, "Daniel Reyes was my brother. He spent years collecting proof." I blinked. "Proof of what?" I asked. "Proof that companies were stealing mountain water," he said. "They were selling it while villages below went dry." I felt my stomach tighten. I looked at the hills and the dry valleys. Small streams wound through the rocks. The sun reflected on the water in the tank. It was clean, pure, and someone had been trying to take it. I realized the new pipe was part of their plan. The water tank had been used recently. The scratches on the ladder were proof. I thought about the note inside the box. It said to find proof. Now I understood why. The evidence was meant to stop the theft. The older man continued. "Daniel hid it here. He knew the right person would find it. Someone who understood responsibility." I looked at him. He was not accusing me. He was offering trust. I felt nervous. The younger man spoke. He wanted the water protected. Someone had to fight for it. I felt a mix of fear and excitement. This was bigger than me. Bigger than the tank. It was about truth and survival. The wind rustled the pine trees. Needles brushed against each other. The dry grass swayed. The sound of the truck engine faded behind the hill. The older man stepped closer. "You have the box. You have the map. You have the choice." My hands were cold. I gripped the box tightly. "I will do it," I said finally. The words felt heavy, but right. He nodded slowly. "Good. Then you understand what comes next." I looked at the tank. I looked at the shack. I looked at the mountains. The land was quiet, but alive. Streams ran through rocks. Stones crunched under the wind. I could hear birds calling far below. The younger man smiled faintly. "You are ready," he said. I realized something. Daniel Reyes had not just given me a tank. He had given me purpose. I felt proud and scared at the same time. My life in the orphanage had ended today. A new life had begun. The wind blew harder. My hair moved across my face. I squinted at the horizon. The sun was dipping behind the mountains. Shadows stretched across the hill. I looked at the box again. Maps, notes, photos, evidence, all waiting to be used. I breathed slowly. The older man spoke. "You will not be alone. We will help. Finish what he started." I nodded. I stepped forward. My boots touched the wooden floor of the shack. I held the box tightly. I looked out at the tank. The mountain stretched endlessly. Streams flowed quietly. The wind whispered in my ears. For the first time, I felt more than an orphan. I felt responsible. I felt alive. I felt ready. And I knew that everything that happened next depended on the choices I would make here on this quiet, lonely hill with the mountain water tank. I stood outside the shack, holding the metal box tightly, my fingers trembling slightly from the cold, and my heart still racing from the events of the afternoon. The wind blew across the hill, pushing the dry grass back and forth, and the pine trees swayed gently, their needles whispering softly against each other. The mountains stretched endlessly in every direction, jagged peaks cutting through the horizon, and the valleys below held narrow streams that shimmered in the late afternoon sunlight. The air smelled of pine, dirt, and the faint hint of moisture from the tank, and it carried a sense of quiet anticipation that pressed against my chest. I looked down at the tank, its metal surface dull with age, streaked with rust, yet strangely imposing, as if it had guarded its secret for decades. I remembered the scratches on the ladder, the faint glow of water when I had opened the lid, and the heavy box inside, the maps, the photographs. The notes, all pointed to a single truth. Someone had been stealing the mountain water and selling it illegally, while the surrounding villages struggled to survive. My mind replayed the sequence over and over, as if trying to make sense of it all. How could an orphan from a small town be chosen to take on such a responsibility? Yet, the trust in Daniel Reyes' note, the message for the right kid, had pulled me into a reality I could not ignore. The older man approached slowly, his boots crunching over the gravel, each step deliberate. He removed his hat, wiping sweat from his forehead, and his eyes met mine, calm but searching. "You understand what this means, don't you?" he asked. His voice was steady, yet there was an edge of urgency. I nodded, swallowing hard, the weight of the responsibility sinking deeper into me. "Yes," I said. "I found the box, and I know what I need to do." The younger man shifted near the ladder, his hand resting lightly on the wooden post, eyes flicking between the tank, the shack, and me. He seemed nervous, but attentive, ready to act if anything went wrong. We all stood in silence for a few moments, listening to the wind, the distant call of a bird, the soft ripple of water in the tank. The older man finally spoke. "The water here. It belongs to the mountains and to the people. Those companies taking it, selling it, leaving villages dry, they have no right." Daniel spent years collecting proof, making sure no one could dismiss it. And now, it is your turn to see it through. I nodded again, feeling a mixture of fear, pride, and determination. My life in the orphanage had ended months ago, but this felt like a beginning, a purpose that could define me. I opened the metal box slowly, placing it on the table inside the shack. Dust fell from the corners as I lifted the lid. The folders were still dry, the papers organized, the photographs intact. Maps marked with red circles, names of companies, locations of illegal pipelines, and photographs of trucks near streams all fell before my eyes. I ran my fingers over the photographs, recognizing areas I had seen on the drive up. My stomach tightened as I realized how extensive the operation was. Entire sections of mountain streams had been tapped, pipelines running secretly through hidden paths, water diverted to trucks for sale. Villages downstream were left with cracked wells and dry soil. The injustice of it made my hands clench the edges of the box. The older man leaned over my shoulder, pointing to a cluster of marked locations. "These are the main points," he said. "The pipelines start here, here, and here. If you follow the trails, you can find the evidence. Take photographs and record measurements. That is how we expose them." I nodded, memorizing each detail, aware of how much knowledge I now possessed. The younger man added, "You will not be alone. We will help you, but most of this work will need to be done carefully. One wrong move, and they will know someone is on to them." I felt the weight of responsibility settle fully onto my shoulders. The task was massive. The mountain water was life itself, and the people relying on it were unaware of the theft. I thought about the villages, the dry wells, the children who might go thirsty. A determination rose inside me, steady and firm. I had nothing before, no home, no family, no purpose. Now, I had all three, tied into this mission. We spent hours going through the folders, maps and photographs, planning routes, noting times when the trucks usually moved, and identifying areas to stake out for observation. Every detail mattered. Every misstep could alert the perpetrators. I felt a thrill mixed with fear. The air grew colder as the sun dipped lower behind the mountains, painting the peaks in gold and orange. Shadows stretched long across the hill. The wind blew stronger, rattling the metal sides of the tank and shaking the shack slightly. It was a reminder that the mountain itself was alive, observing and waiting. Night fell gradually, bringing with it silence deeper than any city night. Stars emerged, scattered across the sky in brilliance, cold and distant. The older man and the younger man set up a small campfire outside. I stayed inside the shack, reviewing the photographs again under the dim light of a lantern. Each image told a story of greed, of exploitation, of quiet theft. And I understood why Daniel had hidden it in the tank. No one would suspect an orphan to inherit a rusty water tank in the mountains. It was perfect cover, a secret guarded by natural isolation and a careful plan. I felt awe and respect for the man who had designed this. He had trusted me. The fire crackled outside, casting flickering shadows on the shack walls. The younger man spoke quietly. Most people would ignore this. Most would see a tank and leave it alone. You didn't. You found it. And that shows character. That shows integrity. I felt a flush of pride mixed with anxiety. Integrity was easy to claim, but now I had to live it. Every step of the way. Every climb up the hills. Every stakeout. Every photograph I would take could expose the companies. But it could also expose me. The stakes were high. Sleep was fitful. I lay on the cot, listening to the wind, the creaking of the tank, the distant rustle of animals in the trees. Every noise sounded amplified. I imagined the men who were taking the water, trucks running quietly at night, hidden pipelines, and unseen eyes watching. My mind ran through the plans, imagining every step. By the time the first light of dawn touched the mountain peaks, I was already awake, alert, and ready to move. The older man woke me quietly. "Time to see the sights," he whispered. We packed the box carefully, ensuring nothing would fall or be noticed. We carried cameras, notebooks, and measuring tools. The younger man led the way down a narrow path, toward the first stream. The terrain was rough, rocks jutting out, pine needles slippery underfoot, but we moved carefully. I felt my legs burn from climbing, but did not stop. Every step mattered. Every movement could reveal us. When we reached the first marked site, the stream was nearly dry. I knelt beside it, placing my hands in the cold water that trickled slowly over the rocks. I measured the flow, recorded photographs, and noted signs of tampering. I saw small cuts in the banks where pipes had been buried and covered. I realized how methodical the companies had been. They had calculated every detail, assuming no one would notice. But I noticed. Daniel had noticed. And now I was noticing too. By midday, we had documented several locations. We moved carefully between streams, hiding our movements from the roads and staying low where trucks might pass. The older man guided me, explaining the signs to watch for, the subtle differences in soil, the unnatural bends in plant growth where pipes ran underneath. My confidence grew with each observation. My fear slowly transforming into determination. I was learning the language of the mountains, reading the trails, listening to the water, understanding the patterns of both human and natural activity. As the sun began to dip again, casting long shadows across the valleys, we returned to the tank. Exhausted, yet satisfied with the day's progress, I realized the true significance of what we had found. We had proof. We had documentation. And we had the power to make a change. I looked out across the mountains, the rivers and the valleys, and felt a connection to the land that was deeper than anything I had known before. It was no longer just a water tank. It was a symbol of trust, responsibility, and hope. And I knew that, despite the challenges ahead, I would not falter. I had found purpose, and nothing could take that from me. I placed the box carefully back inside the shack. I looked at the two men. Their eyes reflected pride and respect. I understood that this journey would be long, exhausting, and sometimes dangerous. But it was worth it. The water belonged to the mountains, and now it belonged to me. In the sense that I had to protect it, I had to finish what Daniel had started. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I truly belonged, not to a place or a family, but to a mission that mattered, to a world that needed someone who would care. I took a deep breath, listening to the wind, the water, the quiet strength of the mountains, and I knew I was ready.